as the Montreal Canadiens begin their NHL season, Ryan Poehling is not in the lineup. This is a player who a lot of people were trying to pencil him in as potentially the team's number 4 center during training camp, but he didn't really earn that job. And it looked as if he was going to end up on the team probably without a little bit of merit. And then the Canadiens end up claiming Adam Brooks on waivers, and then Poehling is sent down to the Laval Rocket. And I'll ask this question out here. Maybe it's a little bit broad and perhaps a little bit alarmist to say, but let's have the conversation. Do you think Ryan Poehling genuinely has a future with the Montreal Canadiens?
I'm getting, unfortunately, some real Kyle Chipchura vibes from Ryan Poehling, where he got close for a short time and he's just getting passed on the depth chart by other players. And Adam Brooks is a little bit more skilled than Poehling is, and I'm not sure if Poehling's defensive acumen is high enough for him to jump Brooks at any point this season. Injuries could give him an opportunity down the road, and the Canadian center depth is not super strong after the departure of Danault in the offseason and losing Kotkaniemi, and only able to bring in like some depth guys along with Christian Dvorak. But I'm not seeing a lot of promise in Poehling so far. I wanted to see more in training camp, and he wasn't awful. I just wasn't overjoyed with what I saw, we'll say.
It's not a good sign when Alex Belzil, a 30-year-old who was never drafted and has played 2 games in the NHL, makes the team, and Ryan Poehling doesn't. First-round draft pick. That's not a good sign for Ryan Poehling. The answer to that question, does he have a future? Ryan Poehling is the only one who really has the answer for that, because the Canadiens gave him every opportunity at this training camp to earn a job. They played him in almost every preseason game. They wanted him to be on this team. I believe the Canadiens, I think the coaching staff and Marc Bergevin wanted him to be on this team. They don't want another player added to that list of first-round draft picks that have been busts with the teams. I mean, they gave him every opportunity to do it, and he didn't do it. He didn't bring it. Like, Rob Ramage, before training camp started, the Canadiens director of scouting or player personnel, said, what do you want a guy to do coming into training camp, like a guy fighting for a job? And he said, get noticed, like do something to get noticed, whether it's a big hit or a strong back check, get noticed. And he did nothing. I mean, the most noticeable thing I remember is him missing almost a wide open net on a perfect setup. So does he have a future with this team? He's only 22 years old. Sending him back to the AHL, I think, is the right move at this point. Let him play a ton of games. He had a good season last year before he had the wrist injury with Laval. Let him play a ton, put him on the first line center, play him on the power play, play him on PK, play him the last minute, and let him prove that he deserves to be here. And again, he has the answer to that question. He has to prove that he belongs to be with the Canadiens, and he hasn't been able to do that so far.
And I think it's fair to say that one of the toughest jobs with the management of these young kids is projecting, okay, when and if this guy is going to be an NHL player. And I think with Ryan Poehling, we're seeing a situation where he teased everybody when he first came up and did great things against Toronto. But again, he's a young guy. I think you have to be a little bit more patient with him. He might be a late bloomer. He's the kind of guy that he's not deserving of being on the team because of his past performances, but he he has the classic potential to become a player. And I think before you cut and release a guy like this, you have to be a little more patient, see if he can understand what he has to do. But I have to say that as a player, it comes a point where you have to make things happen as an individual. You can't be coddled and talked to and stroked to try and get you to perform and become a better player. So he's got to get that into his head, like now, that if you want to play in the NHL, you better get your act together because time is running out. But don't pull the cord on him just yet. Let's see how he does. Think he did feel a lot of pressure. He didn't respond very well to it. Let him mature a little bit and see if he can't get his game back. And I hope for him as another first rounder that he's able to progress in the right way and he can be part of the Canadiens organization in the near future.
Yeah, basically every player in the NHL was the best player on his team as a kid. all the way coming up. And especially if you were a first-round pick. I mean, Rick Green, number 1 overall pick. Rick, I'm sure you were best player on your team as a kid growing up. And then you get to the NHL, and you're not necessarily the best player on the team. It's a new reality for these guys. I'm sure Ryan Poehling had never been cut from a team probably in any sport. He's a young athletic kid his whole life. And then when you get to the pro level and everybody's good and you're not the best guy on the team and you're fighting for a job, it's a new reality for a lot of these guys. Some of them handle it better than others. And I think in hindsight, scoring those 3 goals in his first NHL game was a bad thing for Ryan Poehling. I think it raised expectations from fans and maybe raised expectations for himself. He was never a big goal scorer in university. And Michel Therrien, when he was coaching the Canadiens, had a great line. He said, there's different chairs on a team, and you got to find which chair you fit into. And Ryan Poehling is not going to be a first-line star player in the NHL. He's going to have to maybe a third or fourth-line player. He's got to get that through his head, and he's got to find the chair that he fits into, and he's got to realize the work he has to do to fit into that chair. So he hasn't figured it out yet, but as Rick said, he's only 22 years old. I wouldn't give up on him yet. Again, send him back to Laval, let him play a 10 and figure things out. And he had a great quote. He says, the AHL, Ryan Poehling had a great quote. The AHL either makes you or breaks you. And he's got to go down there and make sure that it doesn't break him and that it makes him.
For sure. Andrew, before we sign off, did you want to add one final word about Ryan Poehling?
I just agree with Rick and Stu that it's up to him to make an impact here. And I think offense is not the area where we're going to expect the most out of him, but he does have to bring something to the team, find that chair, as Stu put it, quoting Michel Therrien. He hasn't found it yet. And maybe it comes down to maturity, but at 22 years old, you're still young, but patience starts to wear thin in an organization. And once you get to 23, 24, you're no longer really a prospect, right? You're a guy who's supposed to be making the team. So this is kind of a make or break year for Poehling.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of seeing it.
Just one last point. I mean, Jake Evans, a 7th-round pick, found that chair, right? He found the chair that he fits into. 4th-line center, be able to win faceoffs, be able to kill penalties, work your butt off every single time you're on the ice. Never take a shift off. And he found that chair as a 4th-line center. Now he's been moved up to a 3rd-line center. I don't think he fits in that chair. I think he's better. But one of the reasons he's in that chair is because Ryan Poehling's not the 3rd-line center. That was the game plan, I think, was that Ryan Poehling is a 3rd-line center and Jake Evans is a 4th-line center moving forward. Jake Evans has done everything to find that chair he fits in the NHL, and Ryan Poehling hasn't.
It's like a game of musical chairs. Bring me all the way back to elementary school. Anyway, Ryan Poehling, probably better off for him that he gets top-line minutes in Laval as opposed to being a 13th forward in Montreal, just sitting there and not getting any development. Visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out our full episode. Subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter at montrealgazette.com/newsletters, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for Hockey Inside Out so you can get more of these bonus episodes.